So how are you feeling today, Ken?
Man, I'm feeling great, Mark. How about yourself?
Oh, we're like two Adams that walked in the bar.
We really are.
One Adam said, I'm feeling like I'm missing a neutron. Bartender says to the other one, is he sure? And he said, oh yeah, he's positive.
And I know why you're a CPA. Yes.
Two vampires walking the bar. Okay, well again, we're glad to be here. We're certainly excited about being in Philadelphia. Glad that NASBA has come to Philly, and Pat, thank you for the introduction. I had heard that the crowds in Philadelphia can be kind of rough. If y'all don't know, I believe the Eagles fans one day threw snowballs at Santa Claus. I mean, it doesn't get much lower than that, huh? So apparently they have rough crowds, but I'm hoping that y'all will not be a rough, cruel crowd to deal with over the next couple of days. What do you think?
I love this city and this state. You know, I actually got to know Pat and some of the other members of the Pennsylvania board when we were up here working on some legislation a couple of years ago. Very warm, truly brotherly love. It was a great place to be, Harrisburg, Philadelphia. So I'm in one of my favorite places on the planet. So we hope you enjoy Philadelphia as much as we do.
Very good. We're looking forward to a great meeting. Of course, there's been a lot of changes, and I think you'll see some things that are being implemented at this meeting, at this conference over the next couple of days. Some things visually, some things orally, some things in the structure. And of course, there's been changes that have been going on in Nashville and throughout NASBA that we'll be talking about in just a moment. The back to the root thing.
Yeah, you know, Mark, when I was selected as CEO, kind of looked at, you know, I'd had the opportunity to work with David for 5 years, and so we had worked on a lot of things together, and I knew it was my responsibility to take NASBA to another level, to the next level. But one of the things I talked about with the staff and with the volunteers is that, you know, we were doing a great job in businesses and all the things that we're doing, but I wanted to go back for a while and what I called concentrating on our roots. And that was Back to Our Roots initiative. And really, why does NASBA exist? NASBA exists solely to support and make more effective our state boards of accountancy. So I wanted to make sure that we weren't missing that focus. So it was really a primary part of what I wanted to do. You know, after a short period of time, though, we came up with something we thought was even a better slogan for going forward.
Well, I didn't really like the phrase "back to our roots."
Yeah, you pointed that out to me a couple times. I remember that.
And I'm always one to walk in your office and say, I have an idea. In fact, there's a joke around Nashville, which is that the 3 scariest words in Ken's life is when Mark walks in his office and says, I have an idea.
Okay. No, you have wonderful ideas, boss. I think they've all been okay.
The pause was there because it's actually 4 words, I have an idea. But the scary part is the last 3, I have an idea. You know, we talked about some state boards that sort of drifted from NASBA over the years. We talked about back to our roots, getting back to basics. And then one day, Cassandra, Tom Kenny, and Ryan Hirsch and I were sitting there and we're just kind of grinding on what would be a good theme for the coming regional meetings. And working with the phrase back to our roots, and then all of a sudden, after probably about an hour of thought processes, Ryan sort of softly said, mission-driven, member-focused. It was more like mission-driven, member-focused. I said, what did you say? He said, mission-driven, member-focused. And we looked at each other, and I said, Ryan, I think you have knocked it out the park. And so it is the theme for the next couple of days. It'll be a theme for the Western Regional Meeting. Perhaps it'll be the theme for the whole year, or maybe even beyond. We're excited about it.
We are indeed. And I can remember the day you walked in my office once again and said, Ken, I have a great idea. Well, I love the idea. When he told me that slogan, I said, that's exactly the right word. So we're very excited. So if you're looking, I think they've got a treat in front of them this morning.
Yes, we do. And Ryan, of course, has always done a lot of good creative things for us, and all the credit to Ryan for the thought process that he went through and the idea that he came up with. Goo-goos. We used to be all into goo-goos at NASBA. And there were those that loved them, those are those that loved mass quantities of them, and there were those that would run away from them. But we're heading in a different direction now, and you have M&Ms. Everybody has M&Ms that are inscripted in some which way with mission-driven, member-focused. I just don't know about the goo-goos.
Yeah, I know. We'll talk about that later, Mark.
Okay.
It's a sensitive subject to some people.
So y'all let us know if you prefer the M&Ms or if we need to go back to Goo Goos or whatever. But
I
we
will
have some
tell you,
thought
though,
process.
we will have bowls of M&Ms available for you outside for those who need the sugar rush. You know, we want you to think mission-driven, member-focused. So we'll have M&Ms available for you throughout the conference. So for those who need a sugar rush, we'll be there for you.
NASBA's responsibility is to represent the state boards. It's all about being relevant. We have responded to about 4 different exposure drafts or proposed legislations at the items of proposed legislation at the federal level over the past few months. And in the course of this transitionary period of time, Ken had concern as to what is really the definition of the NASBA position, and how are we comfortable with that we are representing the common interest of our state boards in some of the documents and some of the correspondence that we put forth. And he and his staff came up with a great idea, which was to push that process down a little bit. Typically the process is that the Regulatory Response Committee will evaluate the issue and discuss the issue, and they'll even create a draft of correspondence that will be put forth and given to the chair and the president CEO for their consideration, and eventually, if they approve it, it'll be signed and sent to the addressee, be it a congressional committee or PEAC or whomever we're responding to. Well, we just don't know if that's sufficient to answer the question of, is that the definition of the NASBA position? And so what Ken came up with was a vetting process to incorporate into that process the regional directors, those that are duly elected to represent their respective regions, and there's 8 of them. And we actually invoked that process in a letter that we wrote to the PCOB dated on March 23rd. But if you'll describe just a little bit more about that thought process.
And you know, when I first took over as president and CEO, one of the comments that I heard from several of you in this room and others around the country was, what does it mean when NASBA says the NASBA position? And you know, we didn't have a really good answer for that. I mean, typically, sometimes we have issues that are exposed for a long time. So we talk about them at regional meetings, we put up microphones and give people an opportunity to opine. But sometimes these exposure drafts come out with a very short window. And so we would put together what we call thought leaders to look at those problems, and then we would express ourselves as NASBA. But some states said, you know, that's not good enough. And so what we looked at was, what is the fairest thing that we could come up with to give you know, some representation to all state boards in any of these major opinions that we issue. So I guess the most positive thing was the positive remarks that I heard back from our constituencies after we implemented that. We wrote about it in the state board report. We implemented it a couple times, as you mentioned, and we're hearing very positive response. But it's still evergreen. We're still looking at that. But you know, we went back and looked at the bylaws recently, Mark, and it talks in our bylaws about NASBA's role in representing the collective interests of state boards of accountancy. And that's what we consider that part of, us making sure that when we represent you, we're doing that in a way and in a manner that is collective of your interest and not just a few people. So that is the goal that we have set for ourselves.
And specifically on this vetting process, again, it's a situation that would be invoked at the discretion of the chair and the president to pass on this draft of correspondence to the regional directors for their feedback. The result of that would be that the regional directors may choose to kick it back to the Regulatory Response Committee for further consideration, or they could choose to put it in the dumpster and it's over with, or they give it to us and then we have the determination to make the final approval, signature, and issue it. So I think it's a good process, and like I said, we've invoked it once. I also want to mention that it was in March that we responded to Senate committee and a House committee on a jobs bill that was, the train had left the station, the jobs bill was going to be passed, but we had input that we wanted to put as related to some provisions that would allow emerging companies, it had a definition of what that was, that would be able to be exempted from recent changes in accounting standards. And we didn't think that was a good thing. Regulatory Response Committee did not think. But the point I wanted to make was it was a real short window, and Louise Haberman and Colleen Conrad just did a super job in turning that around in a matter of hours through the wordsmithing, and it was really a great job that they did, and I was very proud of the product that we signed and sent out.
You know, the word that's up on the screen, relevance, is really what it's about. I mean, the thing is, if NASBA is really going to be a relevant organization, if we're going to represent the collective interest of you, our state boards of accountancy, then we have to have the wherewithal to do that. And you know, we're in a lot better place than we used to be. We are now well represented in Washington, participating in the FAF, FASB, the IRS, PCOB, international organizations. We are growing in relevance continually to make sure that state boards' interests are at the table of these decision-making bodies. We hope you support that. That's why we exist. Again, we didn't come up with the bylaws, you did a long time ago, and we're trying to enforce that collective interest that is the responsibility of NASBA, and it is making you, the state boards, more relevant.
Another couple examples is that we had 4 of our members that attended FAF roundtables. There was 4 FAF roundtables that were held throughout the country earlier this year on the private company standards issue that eventually resulted in what was just released recently, which is the proposal, or I should say the implementation of a private company council that would do oversight work with the FASB. Also, in the short term, there will be PCOB roundtables on the question of auditor rotation that we'll have members attending that and participating in as well.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about effectiveness. You know, we recently launched a new strategic planning process, and what we wanted to do, and I talked about in the state board report, is we wanted to make sure that we involved all stakeholders. You know, this has happened in the past for NASBA, but it's been some time since we've done that. And the last several years, our strategic planning process has been mostly focused on the business units, providing excellent customer service, products and services from NASBA. And again, we wanted to refocus on our mission to state boards of accountancy. So we decided this year to sort of relook at the strategic planning process and bring in all the stakeholders, represented from state boards of accountancy, representing from NASBA's board of accountancy, executive directors, and this time just 4 staff. So the majority of the participants were outside stakeholders, or inside or outside stakeholders to NASBA.
I should say the first meeting of it, which occurred on May 31st and June 1st in Dallas, I was really, really pleased with the contributions made by everybody. The 14 participants, Tim Wright was a NASBA staff person, also was there. But the 4 people that I really wanted to recognize to everybody was Maria Caldwell from Miami, Tracy Harding from Maine, Coulter Baker from Austin, Texas, and Doug Skiles were the 4 sitting members of their respective state boards that were chosen to participate, along with 4 members of the board of directors, and Ken mentioned 4 staff people and 2 executive directors. I'll mention my name as well, which was Wade Jewell from Virginia and Nicole Castle from South Dakota. What really was pleasing to me was that nobody dominated the conversation. Ken was as meek and mild as you've ever seen him, and I'm not being sarcastic. He really was no more contributory than anyone else in the process, and you could tell that there was a surprise that came to him as to some of the thoughts that were put forth by those core members, that I think Ken really went there thinking that we would wrap this process up pretty quick. But that's not going to happen. It's a process that's going to continue. We will probably have another meeting in the course of this summer, and y'all will be part, the entire membership will be a part of it at some point. But right now, staff is accumulating all that information and lit up on the 4 walls during the course of that day. And I thought it was a great process. We actually had a visionary idea, which was that, you know, we wanted to put into everybody's mind the concept of a field of dreams. Your vision for NASBA in the future. As David used to talk about, everything starts with a dream. And Anthony did a great job with this graphic here to kind of put that into place. But I wasn't finished. I wanted to really put into the idea of the participants the idea of strategy. So we went to a ball game the night before. You know, there's a lot of strategy in baseball. When do you bunt? When do you lift the pitcher? When do you hit and run? Do you build a team for speed and all those things?
I'm not sure there was that much strategy in that ball game.
I was just looking for inspiration. And so we go to the game, we're all excited, and it was dollar hot dog night. It doesn't get much better than that. And lo and behold, at the end of the 4th inning, the score was 17-1. In the 2nd inning, the Rangers gave up 8. Home team gave up 8 in the 3rd, 1 in the 4th, and now we're saying if Josh Hamilton comes up and hits a home run, even if he hits 4 again tonight, what difference does it much matter? So instead of seeing inspiration of strategy going on, we were pretty much watching damage control. But the score ended up being 21-8, and we all had a great time. Dollar hot dog night, that's kind of a weird deal. I mean, that was I'll eat anything. That was the worst hot dog on the planet. And it was such a scam, which was that they had, at the same concession area where you get the dollar hot dog, they had hot dogs for sale for like $2.95, $6.95, or whatever. That dollar hot dog, you take a bite into it, and then you see the sign, limit 5 per person. That was so funny. You take a bite of that, you didn't need a limit. You were not going to get any more. So anyway, we went there for inspirational strategy. Like Ken said, we didn't quite get that, but we did have a good time. And Ed did a great job of breaking the ice and getting the organization together. Started off with a great time. We ended up doing a lot of work, and we're waiting to see how that's being processed and compiled by staff to get back to us.
You know, you mentioned that I was surprised. You could add a word. I was very pleasantly surprised. You know, we didn't just throw a group of people together. We didn't pick people from states that we thought just really loved NASBA. Maria's sitting right up front here, Caldwell from Florida. Florida thought we could do some things better, and we wanted Maria to represent us at the strategic planning meeting. And what a great job she and others did. And so I was completely blown away by it. I told Mark after the meeting, I'd walked in there with some preconceived notions that I didn't think I was going to move away from, and I moved a long way.
And one of those was the mission statement. Ken was there. It was like we started talking about the mission statement. Ken was like, let's move on. We're not going to be changing the mission. Well, I believe that we will expand the mission statement. It will probably still be one sentence, so it's not we're going crazy with this thing. But again, Ken was very open, everyone was very contributory, and I think y'all will be pleased, and I hope that y'all will be a part of that process as it unfolds over the next few months.
Well, like I said, we actually, there's so much good work was done. We've decided that we're going to do a follow-up meeting. Staff is going to put together the information. We're going to put that same team back together so that we make sure that what we submit to you is not something that came from staff, but comes from that collective group, so that everybody is in agreement that what we put out there is exactly what they envision. And so we're very proud of that. I also want to talk a little bit about a couple of the things up here besides Dan Dustin's high school photo up there, wherever Dan is. Where is Dan? Hi, Dan. You know, one of the things that we also heard, you know, we often talk about the business units of NASBA, and we have been very successful in CPACE and the CPA Registry and a lot of things that we do. And we often tell you that the great benefit of NASBA is that we work hard in those business units so that we can create the revenue we need to do the things that we need to do for state boards of accountancy. That's the sole reason we exist. Well, you know, one of the things that I wanted to do was put a really a black line between those NASBA resources and what we do for state boards of accountancy. So we didn't have to talk a long time to really explain to you the things that we were doing. One of the things that I knew very early on upon being selected as president and CEO is that I wanted to make sure that we had a senior executive whose focus was not going out selling something NASBA wanted to state boards of accountancy or trying to sell you on a NASBA position, but to have that person out there serving as your ombudsman, out there in your state boards and talking to you about what NASBA could do better. What is NASBA not doing that represents you? And so Dan will do a great job in that. I've known Dan for a long time. Those of you know that he was in New York. He often challenged NASBA, but he challenged NASBA in a very positive and a productive way, and he often made us better. So having him head up as a vice president of state board relations now gives you a key executive within NASBA whose only focus is going to be to keep us on focus to make sure that we're looking out for your best interest and providing the resources we need to provide. The other thing that we've heard indirectly and directly from you really for the last couple years is the need for legislative support. I'm not talking about going out and doing some radical type of legislation. Many of you are fighting legislation that has taken away your resources, your money, your staff, your autonomy. A lot of different bad things are happening around the country. And as we said yesterday, we want you to reach out to NASBA when you need help. We want to be there for you. So we wanted to make sure that we had a strong legislative office and capability within NASBA. You know, one of the things that I learned in mobility was it was critical for us to have a great relationship with the state societies. I was so pleased to have so many state societies here today. We work very collectively with AICPA. We worked with TAC. We worked with other groups. And all of that is critical importance to being successful in legislation, not only in passing proactive legislation, but also on fending off a legislation that may be harmful to a state board. So John Johnson is somebody I've known for a long time in this region. John used to be the executive director of the Florida Board of Accountancy. Did a great job there. He made a lot of friends with the execs in the room. After that, he went to the Florida Institute of CPAs, the Florida Society, and served as their legislative person and governance person there for the society. John comes from a family. His father was a senator. His brothers are attorneys, all of them involved in politics. So John is one of those guys who his entire life has been involved in the legislative process. So we're putting together a team and an office within NASBA that can provide you a high level of legislative support so that when you call us for help, we will be there, interact quickly with the societies, find out where everybody's positions are, and make sure that you have the resources you need to try to be effective in your legislative efforts. So we're very proud of that. There's an example of a newsletter up here. Dick Carroll, are you in here somewhere? Where's Dick? Hi, Dick. You know, one of the things that we're doing now is providing these newsletter services to state boards without charge. You know, this is, again, how do we directly associate to you the revenue that we've gained through the business units. And recently, Dick reached out to us and said, would you support Kentucky by providing us a high-quality newsletter and then ultimately in distributing that newsletter for Kentucky. So how'd that work out, Dick? Pretty good?
It was great. If we had printed it, it would cost us probably between $10,000 and $15,000 to distribute a state printer. So it cost us zero.
Good. Well, the message is, folks, is if your constituents don't know who you are as a state board of accountancy, if you don't have the internal resources to do a newsletter that tells your state CPAs who you are and what you do, reach out to Tom and his group, and they will take care of that for you. They will help you produce a high-quality newsletter without charge to you, so that we can provide that service for you. I also want to talk a little bit, Mark, about the work of the Relevance and Effectiveness Committee. That group is doing a great job. I tell you, one of the struggles we've probably always had at NASBA is defining those two terms. We know that states need to be effective. We know that they need to be relevant. But there's 55 unique jurisdictions that are very disparate. So how you measure effectiveness and relevance is really kind of individual to those states. But we realize that if we're going to measure how well NASBA is doing in helping you enhance your effectiveness, we've got to find some benchmarks to measure exactly what does that mean. And that group is doing a great job.
And I have to publicly apologize to Bucky Glover, because that committee is just a huge number for any committee chair to manage. Bucky, how many committee members you have? Bucky's not here?
He's out there right now.
He's on the program. I believe the number is either 24 or 28, and he has done an exceptional job in managing that number of folks and has a vision for that committee to produce a product that I think is going to be a very useful tool for boards, but it's a process. And again, he's done a great job in managing that number. And I'm just very impressed in how he's done that and with the energy that the committee has put forward.
Absolutely.
There's a couple of executive directors, Mike Henderson and Rick Sweeney, that everyone talks about how they've done a great job in providing input into that. And I remember it was the most popular request on the committee interest forums last year. There was over 50 people that wanted to serve on that committee. And so its title, and I believe that committee was initially created by Billy Atkinson a couple years ago, but board relevance very much resonates with our members. And at its meeting in Dallas, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, you went, Colleen went, Dan Dustin went. Who else went? Or Dan didn't go, who else went there?
Ed Barnicott was there.
Ed Barnicott.
Yeah.
Like I told Bucky, I said, man, we're throwing the kitchen sink to you to try to help you out as far as to get that process going and to make the relevance committee relevant. I'm next.
You're next.
Services to boards. The ALD. I attended an ALD committee meeting, or I should say a portion of it, in San Antonio back in March, and I was very impressed. I must tell you, I was not cognizant enough as to what all goes on in that process. The staff people were there. It seemed like there must have been 5 or so of them. Maria Caldwell was one. I could go on through the list, Elizabeth and everything. And I believe Harry Parsons, and as the chair of the enforcement committee, is going to, in their breakout, have some information about the ALD for y'all, sort of a hands-on experience of it. But it's very impressive as to the details that have gone on into that ALD and now CPA Verify process. It's not just something that just an idea somebody had. They processed it for a year or so, and next thing you know, a magic wand was waved and the ALD exists. It's very, very, very technical. Dan Sweetwood has done an exceptional job in the couple years that he has chaired that group and worked hand in hand with NASBA staff and the committee members, which it's been a lot of executive directors on the committee, but now is also populated by state board members and delegates and associates. But again, I was very impressed. They're doing an exceptional job.
Yeah, we expect to have very soon 36 states on ALD, and we're up to 30 states now on the CPA Verify. Let me just remind you real quickly, ALD is something that is not a moneymaker or a business of NASBA's. It is a service strictly for state boards of accountancy. Under mobility, what we promised you on the front end when we went around and talked about mobility to all the states was there had to be a tool that when someone contacted your state board about John Doe is coming into my state, can you verify this person is licensed? Well, they're not a licensee of your state, so it kind of left you in a void. But this way with ALD, you can look up, find out wherever that person is licensed, and also you can find out whether there's any disciplinary history or any other things that you need to know to do your due diligence as a state board of accountancy. So it's a tool you need. So if your state is not on ALD yet, and if there's some resistance, I hope you strongly consider it. I do know that most states are politically on board with ALD now, so a lot of times it's an IT resource issue, and NASBA will wholly pay for whatever the cost is of conversion to get you to over to ALD, but it's still an onerous process that is sort of slow. The CPA Verify is maybe one that has a little bit more political resistance, and very typically that resistance might come from a board member, but also potentially from a society. So we may need to do a little more education. This CPA Verify is not to put people in harm's way. It is for the citizens who use mobility. If they're doing due diligence, they can go to a central place and make sure that the CPA that they're about to engage is indeed currently licensed and has practice privileges from a state that is substantially equivalent. So it is an important tool. It was a promise that we made that would be tied to mobility. So we hope that everyone has an opportunity to consider CPA Verify and get on board with that.
You know, the CPA Registry, I made a joke about a couple of atoms walking a bar or whatever and so forth. And, but I understand that it was about 25 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, when the CPA Registry was formed. And it started, the innovation really came from three guys, three NASBA members having a cocktail after a NASBA conference. And so it's, how many members we have in the CPA Registry? How many providers, I should say?
7,500 plus.
Wow. And Ted Loden has done an exceptional job following Ted Long as they've worked to work with the revision of the standards, of the CP standards that have gone into effect now. And so we're very proud of the CP Registry. It's doing a good job for member boards as well as licensees throughout the country.
Well, I had a conversation with a couple of boards yesterday about the registry and what it means. And as states become, sparse resources, one of the things the registry does is give state boards comfort that the CPE that comes from those providers can be trusted. And that's a really good thing in your job of public protection. So,
CPACE.
Yeah, CPACE is something that, that's a product that's been around at NASBA and a service for a long time, but we aren't resting on our laurels. It continues to improve. Processes that used to take weeks now take days.
It's amazing.
We've raised the bar of credibility of that organization, so we're doing things faster, but we're doing them better. We're on to up to about over 99% of the people that participate in CPACE now go on and register online versus the paper and pencil model from just a few years ago. So continuous improvements in CPACE.
Wait a minute. But back to registry as well as exam candidates as far as process and applications. How long used to it take for a CPE registry applicant for their application to get processed and for a candidate to get processed compared to today?
Well, again, it went from weeks and sometimes months to days. So tremendous improvements in the process.
Days meaning like a day?
About a work week, about 5 days on the outside parameters, typically, if everything's complete.
Very good.
So also, I want to talk a little bit about licensing services. Actually, more and more states are coming to NASBA to say, can you provide us support for licensing services? We're essentially like CPACE. We actually take the application for licensure and determine the eligibility, just like your state board staff would do. And then we turn back to the state those that are all correct, and if there's any application that has issues, then we go to the state board, just as your staff would, for a determination of eligibility. I want to say one thing very clearly about this, though. NASBA is not in the licensing business to try to go and take jobs away from state workers. That's not what we're trying to do at all. We are in the licensing business because some states came to us, lost their staff, still had the fiduciary responsibility of determining licensure, and asked NASBA to step up to the plate and provide that service. If NASBA is going to provide that service, we're going to do it to the best of our ability, but we want to be really clear. I was talking to Connecticut this week by telephone, trying to answer some questions, and I made it very clear to them, we'll provide that service to you. We'll even provide that service to you on an interim basis if you're typically having financial resource issues and you hope to get those resources back. But again, something we're proud of doing. Contrary to that, we also have a new service where we are going to be pretty proactive. And NASBA, again, at the request of state boards, to do international transcript evaluations. So we have launched NASBA's evaluation services. James, where are you at? James, stand up a minute, James. You look this guy up if you have any questions. James has done a great job of building this from a concept to a business model. We already have some states signed up. But essentially, here's what we're going to do. Historically, NASBA has not done international transcript evaluations. We've only done the domestic transcript evaluations. So when states asked us to do it, we didn't have the tools we needed to do it effectively. So we went out and hired a senior transcript evaluator with foreign credential experience. We went out and bought a library of the resources we need to do those evaluations effectively, and we put together a support team that have multi-language ability to wrap around James and his group. That has an expense. So we decided to get into that business. Enough boards asked us to do that. We felt it was important that we entered that arena, but we're asking you to consider using us. We're not asking for exclusivity. We're not saying only use NASBA. That's not what we're saying. We're saying we would like for you to accept NASBA's international transcript evaluation services along with others and do a comparison of how we do as far as quality. The reason we're in this business is because some of the folks that were doing that service, we don't believe we're doing the level of performance that some of the state boards expected. That's what the state boards told us. So we are in that business. We are aggressively seeking to have you use that service if you think we do it well, and we will. So that's something we would like for you to consider. A couple other things kind of quickly to stay on time here. We have continued to ramp up the Candidate Performance Handbook. Again, that's under James Suh's group. That used to be a static book that came out sometimes 2 years after the data was really live. And now then he has changed that to where it comes out almost in real time. It's refreshed regularly, and we can provide custom reports not only to state boards, but to colleges, universities, and other users of that data. So a much more dynamic business model than we had. Also, we continue to ramp up our ability to support state boards on the investigative support side. Linda Beek is working more with the enforcement side as well as her other duties in government services. But what we're looking at, what can we provide as direct support to state boards of accountancy in the area of enforcement? We already have the investigative support book that we put out there on the interstate. It's on the internet. It's live right now. We're working on providing training for investigators. That's been in the works for a while, but we're now trying to put the horses behind it. And also, we're there to provide whatever type of enforcement support you tell us you need, whether it's, in the case of Connecticut, they needed just some manpower to come in to look through some file boxes on a major case that they had. So depending on what the case is, at least ask us so we can ascertain what are the needs of state boards so we can put the resources together to do that. And finally, Mark, mobility.org. We won an award for that thing.
That's
Do you know
what
that?
I understand.
We put that together. We worked together with the AICPA to develop mobility.org. We wanted something that CPAs could use all across the United States, that they could go to one place, enter the state that they are from, the state where they were going, the engagement that they were going to perform, and know that the answer that software gave them put them in safe harbor. They knew they could go there and know they were not going to be in harm's way. And it gets a lot of hits, and it won the award. So it shows that the collective strength of NASBA and AICPA working on something together that helps both the regulators and the accounting profession.
Ken, as you can tell, has brought a lot of new energy to NASBA. And as I've gone to the office in Nashville, you see some changes physically as well. Some people have moved from one side of a floor to another side of the floor. Some people have moved from one floor to another floor. And there's a new thing up throughout the offices in NASBA called KenoVision.
It is, not officially, but that's what the staff's been calling it.
Ah, that's what they dub it, which basically is a calendar of the day, what events are going on for that day, who is there, if there's a committee meeting there, if there's someone from an external agency like Terry Pauly came to Nashville not long ago, if she would be there, then it's on there for everyone to see. But it's very visual, and again, brings another new energy to it. And I know Ken's very proud, and Louise should be proud, as well as Ann Bell, of the new offices, or the renovated offices in Nashville and New York City.
Yeah, not only New York. I mean, New York. I have to tell you, it was, as Lorraine Sachs used to say, a little tired. You know, when you would visit the New York office, and so you know, we have valued employees going to work there every day. I can tell you, Louise and I had a meeting with some senior Japanese leadership. In our meeting, we sat around what looked like an old kitchen table on some shaky chairs and said, never again. So we have gone in, we've refreshed the office with new furniture, new paint, built a new conference room, beautiful new conference room, break area, a nice reception area. So if you're in New York and if you have a meeting in our New York office now, you won't be ashamed to take anybody to our new office. It looks wonderful. So I know we're happy for the staff in New York. We're also happy that we have that tool and resource available to us in New York. But also the PCS sale. Not only did we make a lot of money for NASBA on the PCS sale, and we continue to be an investor in that company, but it also gave us an opportunity to rearrange the floor space of NASBA in Nashville. So just to give you an example, exam staff was spread over 2 floors, IT staff was spread over 2 floors, some organizations were really over 3 floors in our building in Nashville. So we took the opportunity to say, one time, let's move people where they belong. Let's move people in efficient areas so they can communicate better, work more effectively together, and we took the opportunity to do that. And we also, at the same time, refreshed the 8th floor of NASBA in Nashville as well. We put in a new entryway, a new reception area, gave the people that work on the 8th floor the same aesthetic that the other 2 floors got when they come to work in the morning. So we're very pleased with that.
Very good. David's energy still continues to be evident through the Center for Public Trust. Hope y'all saw the students that were here over the past day or so, and their conference they're having. They have come from many different states, as far away as New Mexico, I believe. And
Saudi Arabia. We had Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia. Yeah. I see. And I actually had lunch with that girl yesterday.
Yes.
Saudi Arabia through New Mexico. But
Yep.
there was 36 students from 15 schools. Alfonso Alexander is doing a good job as the new president of Center for Public Trust. There's 6 chapters, but I think he has plans to more than double that this year, and has worked on receiving some grant money in that regards. So there's a lot of energy going on with the Center for Public Trust.
We did. You know, we took, everybody knows David Costello's energy. We took that energy now and moved it over to the Center for Public Trust, where he's now sits on the board, and Alfonso is doing a great job as the president of Center for Public Trust. You know, I have to tell you, you know, some people on occasion, and by the way, our constituents have a right to question anything NASBA does. But on occasion, people have questioned, why are we doing the Center for Public Trust? I hope those that question why we do that had an opportunity to meet some of those young people yesterday. You look into those bright faces who are going to be the future CPAs and business leaders of America, and because of NASBA and the Center for Public Trust, we're giving them an ethical underpinning and foundation that may impact their entire careers. You know, that's a public protection argument in my book, and something we should be very proud of. So one plug for Center for Public Trust. We hope you consider continuing to support the Center for Public Trust. We think it's important to NASBA, and it's not just NASBA dollars, it's your dollars and other people's dollars around the country that are keeping that opportunity alive for us.
Very good. You know, we've seen a number of changes. A year ago now was when the board of directors selected Ken as the new CEO and president, and there's been a transitionary period since then. And Ken has described the new hires of Dan and Colleen and John Johnson at the executive level. And so those things are going well. The strategic planning process has been kicked off. Galen Hansen has recently had his planning meeting for the 2012-2013 year already, and is much further in the process of that than I was at this point in time last year. So there's good energy there as well. And so we're looking visionary into the future. And now it's your turn. And we have a concept called the Goldfish Bowl. where we want you to offer thoughts that you may have about NASBA, NASBA's programs, services, governance, vision, the future of NASBA, or the problems of today. One thing that we would like for you to do, and there's a page at everybody's place, is to consider what item, what one thing, what one concept, what one idea would you offer for the benefit of the organization, your state board, our candidates, students, educators, licensees, firms, or the general public. And I'll say it again, what one thing. However, there is a piece of paper for you to submit that, and you can have multiple submissions. All the submissions will go into a Goldfish Bowl, and I'm not sure strategically where it is, but it'll be set up at the back of the room or in the hall. And over
There
the
it
next-
is, right there. It just arrived.
Very good. Over the next 2 days, please give that some thought. Now, the thought could be as simple as an idea that would just change, a subtle change in NASBA's website, or in a publication, or in committee structure, or maybe a suggestion for the format of the meetings. Or it could be a concept like I mentioned earlier. It could be the next ALD, it could be the next CPA Registry, could be that vision that's in the process right now for investigating training, or something like that, all of which were innovations that came from members. And so in this process of working forward, or looking forward into the future, we're giving you that opportunity, and we did it at the Executive Director Conference.
I wanted to talk to you about that, Mark, because that was one of those good ideas you had, and that cost NASBA quite a bit of money because you put that Goldfish Bowl up at the Executive Directors Conference, and I hate to use the word vandalism, but it kind of looks like all the suggestions came from one guy or lady.
Oh, we had a handwriting expert.
We did. We had to go out and engage a handwriting expert.
Yeah.
A little DNA testing. Did you know about the DNA testing?
I didn't know about the DNA.
We had
but-
DNA testing.
I didn't.
And you know, do you remember what those suggestions were?
Oh, yeah, they were all about the goo-goos. I mean, it was like, for one of them, you open it up, where's the goo-goos? The next one
When
was...
David Costello was here, you had goo-goos.
Yeah, with David CO, we had goo-goos. We have goo-goos tomorrow. Why don't we take some of that money from the PCS sale and invest into goo-goos? It was all about the goo-goos. That's all that was left.
The investigation is not complete, but we've narrowed it down to North Carolina.
Oh, no, the investigation is complete.
Well, I'm
No, I'm not going to name any names, but I
there
will
might
just
be
say...
a confession upcoming.
I'm not going to name any names, but the handwriting did rhyme. The person's name did rhyme with Cobb Crooks. But with that, we're moving forward to M&Ms. So we're mission-driven and member-focused. Goo-goos, like I said, are a thing of the past.
By the way, folks, we're not talking the talk, we're walking the walk. We're every single day talking about that. We want to be member-focused. You're going to hear that a lot. And this conference today is going to be representative of that, we hope.
But seriously, the opportunity for y'all to submit one thought or multiple thoughts of one on each particular page is there. Just put them into the Goldfish Bowl. Every submission that goes in the Goldfish Bowl will be eligible or will be part of a special drawing at the end of the day tomorrow in tomorrow's raffle, a special prize in that regards. Also, and like I wanted to reiterate, or let me reiterate, the suggestion could be rather subtle, or it could be the next greatest thing since sliced bread into the world of accounting regulation. Don't be afraid to submit something that, again, is just a rather small change. It doesn't have to be the greatest innovation known to man. All submissions will be evaluated by the Executive Committee. After the Western Regional meeting, it occurs in 2 weeks, then we'll look at all of them, and we're going to select one winner. The winner, so you want to be sure and sign your name to it. If it's a good idea, if it's a bad idea, I guess you'll sign Cobb Crooks to it or something. But all submissions will be evaluated by the Executive Committee, and one will be selected as the winner. That author or that innovator, whatever you want to call that person that submits it, will be assigned to a task force. Other members will be assigned to the task force that are relative to that particular idea. If it has something to do with education, then perhaps Karen Turner, the chair of the Education Committee, will serve on that task force. But that task force will meet in the new offices in New York City, probably later this summer or sometime this fall, to further process the idea that's put forth by one of us here today. So again, I encourage y'all to take the opportunity to stuff the Goldfish Bowl as you enjoy your M&Ms and focus on member-driven, mission-focused, or is it mission-focused, member-driven?
Both works.
I
as
think
we
it
know.
works either way.
It
There
does.
you go.
Have a great conference, everybody. Thank you.
Thank y'all.